coaching multiple people for a given company. Is that the gist?
Yeah. In this case 2 right now, maybe 3, and it's a regular gig, hopefully, where the money is more predictable. Individuals kind of, it's harder. You either got to lower your rate, or you've got to find people that are making sufficient funds and feel the value in in constantly, kind of pushing on the envelope,
Yeah, I think the individuals who will pay for coaching are high-level executives who have a lot of cash already and are looking to multiply their impact, who are not really looking for the expertise that you provide. I think is probably the crux of it. So yeah, I mean, the people out in the world of software and such things probably aren't looking to pay a coach.
Yeah, but I think anybody, in first and second level management would really benefit from it. Less so for your typical software engineer, but it wouldn't hurt, right?
Yeah.
Occasional discussions would be really beneficial on the whole. But but that doesn't mean they need it could be, once a quarter even, spending an hour would make a difference in terms of their perspective.
Yeah, totally.
The other thing I think about I've tried to do, and I don't know how to make it happen, is to get a group process going.
Yeah.
Maybe a Hangout is the right way to do it. I haven't tried to do it because I've wanted it to be in a place, but maybe a Hangout is a way that might work.
Yeah.
Aren't you involved in some sort of, I don't know if that's you actually, maybe it was somebody else, some sort of there's some sort of group out there that's mind where people
Mastermind.
Mastermind, there you go. Is that you?
I am involved in such a group. So I did once do a paid mastermind group where there was a Facebook group and there was a weekly, I don't think it was a Hangout, but something like it, right? It was a video chat, kind of a conversation. And it was kind of, it would go around, everybody was on the hot seat and they would have to, basically give the update on, did they follow through on all of the things they committed to last week and commit to things for the next week and stuff like that. And that was pretty cool. I did that for a while. And the group that I have now is basically just 3 guys that we've decided we're basically going to do that for each other. I basically, one guy tweeted about how he wanted to create a group. And so, he and this other guy, decided that I would be good for their group. And so they approached me, said, would you like to be in it? So we have weekly calls. We have a Facebook group where we just kind of chat with each other about what's going on and, some accountability, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. No, I was involved in a men's group for almost, I think 17, 18 years where it was continuous. And then since like I guess 10 years ago now, I've been occasionally stepping into the organization, but not because I'm doing other stuff,
Yeah. And it looks like Brandon joined. Are you there? I don't see video. Oh, I do hear you though.
Yeah, I don't know. My webcam broke last time I moved, so I have to buy a new one.
Cool. Well, welcome. I'm really glad to have you here. I know that you just signed up as a patron a few weeks ago, and you had mentioned in the Facebook group you were going to be here this week. So Awesome. Meet Emilio. He is here as well. He's been around for a while. Been on a few of the calls.
Hi there. How's it going?
Now I think you're in Las Vegas, right? Brandon?
Yes, I am in Las Vegas.
Okay, so you're not too terribly far. Emilio's in California.
Which part?
I'm in Marin right now, in North Bay of San Francisco.
Oh, okay. It's
Cool.
beautiful up there.
I like the smile on your face there. That's good. It is beautiful.
You see a face? I just see. Oh, you're.
Little
Okay.
face in the circle.
I see. Cool.
You know, it pops up every time he says something. So it's like,
Oh, I don't see that. I just see.
oh, really?
I just see the atom.
Oh, okay. It's an atom, huh? Okay.
Is that the React symbol, or I think that's a symbol for? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, this account was born out of the ages where you didn't say your real name on the internet. Because like when you invited me, I noticed it still had like my username tag in there, and I was like, oh, that's so embarrassing.
Yeah, I don't think I saw that. I probably did. I these things go through my mind. Or, slip in one ear and out the other.
Yeah, it's one of those things that means more to the individual than anybody else looking at it.
Yeah. Yeah. So we were just talking about Emilio has landed a corporate coaching gig and is doing stuff like that. And I know you, Brandon, said that you're leading a team, right? Is kind of the thing that you've got going on.
Yep. I got 4 people. We're trying to make a new website for our business, and it's been an adventure for sure.
So the website is for the business. Is it like a web application, or it's just kind of draw clients kind of a thing?
Yeah, no, it's like an internal web app. It
Okay.
manages all our data structures and all that kind of stuff.
Well, that sounds all right.
Yeah, we used React.js for the front end. I think we've like refactored it majorly like 3 times. So we didn't get it right the first time, but we're starting to get the hang of it.
That's cool. Right on. Yeah, React takes some getting used to. I really like it. I haven't used it a lot, but I like the approach. I think it's and now that I hear that they've changed the license, right? I'm thinking that it's probably going to be my de facto choice for doing UI going forward.
Yeah, it's real easy to get into, and like I said, I mean, we've redone it 3 times, so you can always iterate on it, and it only took us like a week and a half to completely change everything. So
yeah,
it's
that's
easy.
cool.
It's easy to get something brand new if you need to.
Right on.
So somebody's done no React. What can you explain the essence of it? Either one of you, or what the model is? I'm guessing it's in the name, but
yeah, no, React is it's the view only layer for websites for the model view controller. It just handles the view.
okay.
And the whole point of it, at least to what we're doing, is reusability. So like when we're displaying data in a table, we made a custom table and we can shove literally anything we want in that table. And it's 150 lines of code, and that's all of our tables. So, and our pages, like the components that render for the router, like it's literally just like 12 lines of code that just goes and gets some data and then passes it into this table, and then it's rendered and you're done.
Nice. So what I think is cool about it, what was groundbreaking in the first place was the idea of the virtual DOM, to where it's not just manipulating the DOM directly, but manipulating this virtual DOM, and so that it didn't have to. It just performs better than a lot of the the stuff that was inspired by Knockout that was just manipulating the DOM. So it's really nice for that kind of stuff. And then I think what's cool too is the way it manages state. Is that you can, it has kind of this Angular inspired kind of an idea of that you can change your state and just have functions that handle changes to the state. And so I think it's kind of a good way of managing state. And then it's code first, right? You can express so many things just in code about how to handle your user interface, which for JavaScript aficionados, it's cool that it can just be JavaScript, and then it's got this kind of its own syntax for HTML that is basically just HTML as JavaScript code, JSX they call it, and so it's kind of it just enables being able to do everything in JavaScript, and you can arrange your view in terms of functionality rather than kind of the traditional of I've got to have my template in one file and my script that works on it in another file and CSS in yet another file. You can kind of put all that stuff in one place, which is something that people are taken aback by it at first because you're not separating concerns. But when I really think about it, the concerns that I want to separate are along functionality rather than along tech, and I think it works really nicely.
Right. So it sounds like it also has delivery and state transition built in the framework somehow. Messaging and event handling, I guess.
Yeah. React exposes because it's a JavaScript class, so they let you overload functions with additional features. So they call it the life cycle of a component, and there's different functions you can hook into, like, if you change the state, maybe you don't want to re-render the screen for some reason, and you could say like, hey, don't do this. Or if you need to do additional things, like if someone clicks a certain field but you want it to do all of these different things rather than just change the one field, like you can hook into it and just start making changes, and it's real powerful. The functional side of it is real good, and it makes it real easy to test too, because they're pure functions if you write them that way. So whatever you put in, you're always going to get the same output out, which is great.
Cool.
Right on.
Okay. So you guys, other than David's podcast, what other podcasts do you listen to?
I like to listen to Software Engineering Daily.
Jeff.
Yep. That's probably my the one I listen to most, besides Developer on Fire.
Well, he's putting out so much content. That's a ton of
there's like it's 3 or 4 a week.
5 a week. Every weekday. Yeah.
Ooh. Yeah, I don't know how he does it. He puts out so much.
Yeah. Well, that is his business. It began as a business, and he's making a living off of it, which I think goes a long way toward being able to do that. And just, he's committed to it. He's also got a staff a couple people that are working for him on it too. So he outsources a lot of stuff. So yeah, I know he's doing a lot. I've kind of fallen off. I haven't been subscribed to it for a while, so I haven't been keeping up. But I know he was. Well, actually, I did a few guest host episodes as well. So I know he has some guest hosts in there doing some of the interviews as well. Besides him, I don't know how much that has taken off, or if he's still doing most of them. But I know he was intending to kind of get out of being the lead, that was always doing the interviews.
Yeah. That's how I found you, actually, when you were a co-host on.
Oh, okay.
You were the host, I guess. He's the co-host, so on his podcast, and normally I found like the ones that he's not involved in, like the ones where he's not the person asking the questions, are not as good personally. So I don't think he's quite ready to make that jump off.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. But yeah, really, most of the hosts are, developers, right? So probably don't have much, if any, experience in doing interviewing, which is exactly where I started too, right? So Jeff, when he started SE Daily, had done some podcasting before. He talked about that on Developer on Fire when he was on, about how he started a Quora something or other. It was a podcast about his. I don't know. It was about Quora. I think it was about the people that did a lot of answering on Quora or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, sounds like you know him better than I do. But yeah, I was gonna go a little deeper on doing more guest hosting on SE Daily. but I just wound up, other priorities wound up getting, he does pay the guest hosts too, which is kind of nice. And I was kind of going to try to make that part of my overall strategy, but I don't know. It just wound up being, he expects a lot of preparation on those things, and it's kind of more time than I wanted to put into an episode. So I wound up kind of doing a little bit, not continuing on that path.
Yeah, I've always wondered how much work goes in behind the scenes, because especially like even with your podcast, like they just run through start to finish. There's no errors. Like everything sounds good. Like I've always wondered how much work it takes.
I do edit mine, so that's that it might sound like there's no errors, but there I do. There's several times that somebody will start to say something and back up and start over, stuff like that. So that happens for sure, and then I just cut that out and go with the good answer.
There you go.
There have been two guys too that kind of after we finished recording, they're like, "Yeah, remember that part when I said that word that could be interpreted as being whatever that thing is? Could you take that out of there?" Yeah, no problem. I don't really want the listeners to hear that either. So
yeah.
There you go.
So what has been who's been your favorite show on your host or host on your show?
The favorite guest that I've had so far?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, that's a pretty much impossible question to answer. Although there is one that stands out that it was. So I had my daughter as there were two guests on the show. I had Linda Rising on the show once before, and I had this idea in my head that my daughter's personality, the way that she gets a lot from me, and she has kind of this tendency to, because she is gifted, right? Kind of this, high capacity to be able to understand things quickly. She gets really frustrated if she doesn't master something right out of the gate, right?
Oh, I understand that.
Yeah, totally. And really, the first time when Linda Rising was on, and she was telling this story about, she was talking about growth mindset versus fixed mindset, and Carol Dweck's book Mindset and some of that stuff. And she talked about that knowing some people who were really smart, and because of being smart, when they had some setbacks, they kind of gave up rather than pushing on and putting in the work. And it resonated so much with me that was my experience, that I have had a lot of experiences just like that. And I recognize that same thing in my daughter. And so I had Linda on talking to my daughter to try to do that. So I think clearly, Kendall, my kid, is my favorite guest I've had on the show. So it's not really a fair comparison there. But I think it was kind of neat having Linda on with her. And it was, I don't know, it was kind of an experiment. I didn't even know if I was going to publish it. I thought it would just be cool to have her talk to this woman who, 74 years old and giving inspiring talks, and keeping herself in good physical condition. And she's just such a fantastic, if you haven't listened to both of the episodes I've had with her, they are worth a listen. She is fantastic. She was on Software Engineering Radio as well, and just mind-blowingly awesome. So, so Linda was awesome. Actually, I put her among my favorites, right? I actually did write a blog post at one point too. I should put that into the Slack. I wrote a blog post because somebody asked me on Twitter that very question. It was actually Jared the Coder, who later became a guest on Developer on Fire. So, yeah, I will find that blog post and stick it in there. So, but Pinal Dave was another one that I think was just really inspiring, and he's a guy that the story was told on the show how he did an interview with John Sonmez for the how to market yourself as a software developer package that John has for sale. And Pinal's interview was kind of the inspiration for me to get serious about getting into blogging and ultimately podcasting. Pinal has you probably know who Pinal is. If you've ever queried anything on Google, that's a query, right? If you ever did a Google search for anything related to SQL, you're going to land on SQLauthority.com eventually.
Yeah.
So Pinal
No, yeah, we had actually had him. He contracted out to my business for a little while. He got our servers, fixed up and tuned and everything.
Oh, that's awesome. That's cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
he's a neat guy. So yeah, I mean, he had this in that interview. He had this. I challenge you to. I forget exactly how he said it, but it's like if you are serious about doing a consistent blogging practice, my challenge is come to my blog and post a comment every day for 7 days. Like if you can't do that, you're not serious enough to do a consistent blogging practice.
Wow.
And so that was kind of okay, Pinal, I'll take you up on that challenge. So yeah, this was I put it into Slack that the list of episodes that I just kind of listed out as being.
What's the Slack you have again?
It is developeronfire.slack.com. I think I added you to that at some point.
I thought so too, but it didn't come up when I. Anyway,
Because
yeah.
I got a message this morning. Here, yeah, it says you're in the room.
Okay. Well, I will. We'll make sure to figure that out. So, oh yeah, I should find Linda Rising as well to put into the links because she's outstanding. Oh, I didn't create a page to. I need to automate that too, to have a disambiguation page for guests that have been on the show more than once.
Okay, yeah.
Oh, this one is Linda with my daughter, and then the original one, episode 39. Man, that was a long time ago.
September 25th, 2015. That's what Google's telling me.
Yeah, right. So, but yeah, those are. Oh, and Pinal too. Let's put Pinal in there. Of course, it's just as easy for you to find these things, I'm sure. But so like you were at Pinal was actually on site with you and in person and all that.
He did remote work. It was all remote
okay.
for him. Yeah, he just came into our servers because we needed. So someone had the idea of putting all business logic in the SQL server.
What could go wrong?
Yeah, and there's entire applications developed in SQL sitting on some of these servers, and I'm talking like 500 stored procs. Like it's a nightmare, and we have some like gigantic box. It's got like 64 cores, like 2 terabytes of memory, like just to serve this application.
Oh my gosh!
And it wouldn't work. It just wasn't working, and then he came in and like tuned it up, and he brought it down from like 60% utilization to 10. Like it was crazy.
Wow. Yeah.
That guy he's literally the SQL authority. Like I don't think there's anybody above him when it comes to SQL Server.
Yeah. Well, he's done his daily blogging practice for over a decade. Every day a post.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
that's a big part of why you will find his site on every SQL search. So yeah, crazy.
What's crazy is he has enough content to write.
Yeah, yeah. Some of his blog posts are pretty short and don't have a lot in them, but nonetheless, it's pretty outstanding.
I'll be right back.
All right. Yeah, it's surprising that you could. I mean, trying to post a question in the Facebook group. Most days I'm kind of like, oh God, what am I going to ask about today? I mean, it's not easy to do something like that and to think of actually something worth posting. So, yeah, it's a lot of content, and how he keeps going, I don't know.
Yeah, like I don't use Facebook a ton, but when I log in, I always see those questions, and I'm like, this is a great question. Like, it gets me thinking in the morning, like right before work, like, what do I need to do today? Like, what would make today successful? I think it's really inspiring, honestly.
Cool. Well, that's what I hope for. Yeah, that one is automatic, right? So I don't have to do that one every day. It's just automatically in there, and yeah, it's intended to be kind of that thing, be on track, keep you accountable, remember that one thing that you need to get done today. And then hopefully, right, you're going to deliver on that one thing. If that's all it is one thing. So if you deliver on that one thing, then you got something to feel good about.
Right. Yep.
So
I totally with you. It's been a good week. Like just getting focused and saying like I'm gonna do this one thing today. And
right on. Cool.
so what other stuff have you been up to besides podcasting?
So recently, so I was doing a contract basically through August. So I was doing DevOps, a build automation, deployment, all of that kind of stuff, automating that kind of stuff.
Okay.
So that, at the end of August, I got done with that. Since then, I've got a buddy who has a business. He's creating a real estate brokerage
Okay.
and providing to the realtors in his brokerage a bunch of tools, right? So it's kind of half tech business and half brokerage. So there's a lot of kind of data analysis and trends kind of stuff that he's been putting together. I have been in this last month kind of doing a few things for him, both with kind of AWS infrastructure kind of stuff, and doing some stuff with just tools for realtors, trying to help out with that. So I'm doing a little bit of that, not full time. The other thing that I'm really working on at this point is that I'm going to try to put on a remote conference. And I was going to try to do it before the end of the year. I think I've changed my mind about that. It's going to be in January. And so I've got several guests of Developer on Fire that I have contacted and tentatively agreed to, and I haven't firmed up the date. Well, actually, I think I have. I think I've decided that the date is going to be January 22nd, the week of January 22nd. So I think it's going to be 3 days. And so I basically put out a survey, and a bunch of people responded, and one of the questions was, who would you like to hear on this thing? And so a bunch of the guests of the show were requested, and so I reached out to the folks that were requested in the survey. And so I have a bunch of speakers tentatively agreed to be in the show, right? Or be speakers in the conference. So this guy, Joe Colantonio, who's been on Developer on Fire too, he's got the podcast called Test Talks, and he's done these remote conferences before. And I'm basically following his template with some modifications, but basically following his template, where it's, each of the speakers pre-records a session that is then just available before the conference and after. And it's just kind of an ongoing, forever available thing. Essentially, the conference is a membership site. And so I'm starting to, well, I actually have it available now to sell tickets. I haven't really tried to market it yet, really, until I get the landing page updated with here's the date and that kind of stuff. Then I'm gonna start putting some mentions of it in the show, and and try to get some people buying some tickets. So that's kind of my next intent on trying to do some monetization of the podcast and flip the script to where, instead of being professional programmer and hobbyist podcaster, trying to turn it into professional podcaster and hobbyist programmer. So that's what I'm hoping that this is going to do for me. So that's the try to monetize the audience thing that I've got going on.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. Just because, like, I'm not too hip on travel. Like, I like to travel every once in a while, but it gets really tiring for me to go conference to conference to conference, and having it online would be real good.
Yeah, I have not gone to a lot of conferences throughout my career, and as I've gone to a few recently, I've been missing out. But at the same time, I don't want to leave my kids at home. And I don't want to leave my wife solely responsible for doing all the things that they need and getting them where they need to go and cooking and cleaning and all of that business, right? I just feel bad about leaving her, without me to help out with all that stuff. So, I don't like doing it, even though she's very encouraging and, you should do some of these things. And I really should be, especially now that I'm, kind of more of a raised profile. And when I went to Kansas City this summer, and actually my wife went with me to Kansas City, and we left we left the kids with my parents in Omaha. So we drove out to Omaha, and then my wife and I drove on to Kansas City from there, which was cool, and it was fun. And everybody thought I was crazy that I made that trip driving, but it was cool. Got to go to my parents' house too. But anyway, it was so awesome to shake the hands of a lot of the Developer on Fire guests, right? That I got to actually meet them in person there, and I just had a great time and was just thinking, man, I really should be doing more of this. And I think the remote conference is, a step in that direction. It's a way to have some of those interactions and some of those things and some of the benefits that I've got from doing the show, right? I'm trying to hopefully get some people to be able to experience some of that.
Yeah. It's kind of like, hallway conversations, or when you work remotely, they become difficult, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So what Joe's done with his conferences, and he's done 2 of them now, and his third one's going to be in January again.
Lost you.
Yep, we lost you.
Must be him, I guess.
Yeah.
If we can hear
He'll
it.
be back.
Chrome just crashed on me.
Uh-oh.
That
Blame
was
it on Chrome.
Indeed. Oh yeah. Oh, and when I refreshed, it looks like it got a different identity in as me.
Yeah, there's 2 of you now.
Yeah. So that's interesting. At least the call didn't die with me. I thought it might, since I was the host of it. So that's good. So yeah, Joe Colantonio's remote conferences have been pre-recorded sessions and then a live Q&A with the person, where basically Joe was reading questions out of Slack to the presenter, which I think is a pretty good way to do that. I think adding in some, here's a link to go join a Hangout or something along those lines, right? To get some of those hallway conversations you were talking about there, Emilio,
Yeah.
I think would be a really cool addition to that. Although I'm kind of concerned that if there are too many people joining a Hangout, that might be pretty hard to manage. But I don't know. There might be some ways. It sounds like some custom software, right?
Yeah, no, well, yeah. There's certainly software out there that manages that sort of thing already. I don't know. I don't know the source, but
yeah.
Yeah. There's a couple of things out there, because this is kind of getting into my wheelhouse of SIP and WebRTC and things like that. And video's honestly one of the hardest mediums to still do, like, just because of the sheer amount of data.
Yeah.
Like, if you got 8 people with 1080p streams and you need to stream all of that to every 10 people, like, you're just sucking up bandwidth like nothing.
Yeah, it's crazy what Hangouts can do.
I remember when it was a research topic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. I did want to mention this one podcast that I was listening to on the way over to where I'm at, called Exponent.
Exponent.
Sounds like math. Sounds like data science.
No, it's about business, and Exponent refers to exponential growth. I think it's a great podcast to kind of tune up your thinking about business, and the 2 guys on it are pretty interesting. Otherwise,
You probably consume a lot of business content with kind of wanting to be in the coaching business like you have been and all that stuff, right?
Some, yeah. I mean, right. I one company I was at a long time ago. One of the people on the board, took me aside once and explained that this is a business, and said, read this book, which I can't remember the title of, but it was very very simple book about just the idea of business, and I think it's a critical perspective to be really successful, especially after if you get out of the simply development role, to really understand what your business is about and what's important, and always be putting on that hat. Is this supporting the business?
Yeah, business is terrifying. I have, it's easy, well, for us geeks, right, to dig into software, but man, dealing with with the concerns of marketing and all of that kind of stuff is it scares me to death.
Yeah, I prefer other people to do that shit.
Yeah, same. Like those marketers, like they earn their money because that's so difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Right. I think I've always appreciated that there was it took many skills to really make most businesses go, but just always thinking about it. So for 20 or more years, I've been thinking about it. Of course, I have had my own consulting company in one form or another for I'm guessing going on 25 years. So
Wow. So how'd you get that started? Because that's honestly something that I'm thinking about because
oh well, so consulting is so I lived in Silicon Valley, which probably made it a little bit easier to your reputation as a developer uh, and then having when people are having a hard time hiring, it's easy to make that transition in Silicon Valley. Now, it may not be easy in other places. Of course, today with remote development, there's a real it's probably easier, right?
Yeah. Well, consulting can mean a lot of things too, right? I mean, all the way from basically just staff augmentation. You are doing what is needed for a team, just kind of a consultant in name only, basically doing the work of a full-time employee, all the way up to just going in and offering advice rather than actually doing anything, right? So
Right.
there's a pretty broad spectrum of,
Right.
of what that is.
Yeah, and I wound up doing at all those levels, but mostly, the bread and butter was doing development, right? As
Yeah.
a senior member of a team,
Yeah. So not necessarily just for this particular project, bang this thing out. It's you're part of this team and you do what's needed to take the team forward.
Yeah. Usually a project that's off to the side in some way, or it's usually would not be on the mainstream of the development, but but people needed another piece, and so they come in. I come in, I understand the problem, I design a solution, uh, and go implement it. The contracts that were part of a team were always less interesting unless I was actually leading the team,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's most of what I've done too, right? I mean, I started, when I stopped being a full-time employee, the first contract I did was a company that had a kind of an old version of their application, and they needed to keep their team working on, maintaining that thing and moving it forward. And but they wanted to move. I mean, it was Windows Compact Edition, Windows CE application, and they wanted to move it up to to the new. I guess it was about the time of Windows 8, right? So they brought me in with it being kind of a, this is going to be a Windows Store type application, and it wound up that they also had to support Windows 7, but it was still, it was modernizing their application and creating this new thing. So I came in as just that, like you said, it's kind of this isolated project to build that thing up, and I've done several gigs that were kind of like that too.
Yeah.
So, what are you thinking, Brandon? What are you looking for that you want in getting into consulting?
yeah, I mean it sounds like just what your guys' experience is, because that's the fun part of tech for me. I like having someone say, "Hey, I got this problem," and then I sit back and go, "Okay, well, here's a couple of different ways how we can solve it," and getting to that conclusion and then implementing it. I just that's the best part about tech for me. And
Yeah.
at my current job, like I've implemented our entire SIP stack. I did our microservice architecture, and now I'm kind of like, all right, I've done this, and it's great and it works, and there's not a ton of maintenance on it, but that if there's no maintenance, then there's no new problems, which means I'm kind of getting bored. So
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, well, going to those conferences and talking about those projects would be a great way to find consulting gigs.
okay,
Yeah.
that is
Yeah.
that isn't something I considered before, but yeah, that,
Well, you need to find, all right, I mean, unless you have it in your, so being in Silicon Valley, I had a reasonably large personal network that allowed me to make those transitions. But being in Las Vegas, I suspect it's narrower, and
yeah.
you're gonna want to go to a conference or something to make to talk to people.
Yeah, the good thing about Vegas is a lot of people like coming down here for conferences. So,
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's easy to get to a conference when you live in Las Vegas.
yeah,
Sure.
so I could just kind of show up, buy a ticket, and show up, and I could do things like that.
Yeah.
Well,
The
you should
only-
also be
Get your
submitting.
company to pay for the ticket.
Yeah, submit talks too, right? I mean, is another way to make sure you're getting in there. And, those people who are interested in those skills that you have are, probably going to have some developers sitting in the room in your talk that might come up to you and talk to you afterwards too.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was suggesting.
Yeah, because that's always been a rough thing for me when I go to conferences. Like, I listen to this talk, and then I'm like, I should go talk to that person. And then, like, I'll see them later, and I'm like, oh, they look busy, or oh, someone else is talking to them. Like, I need to get over that, and just walk up to them and say, hey.
Yeah. I went to a conference in 2014 that I basically decided that I was going to walk into the room shaking hands. And that was just going to be my approach to the thing. And it was a small conference. There was like, I think 150 people at this conference. And I made it a point that I was going to shake every hand at that place. And, I think that was a good step,
That's great advice. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's good stuff, because like usually the SIP, or telephony conferences, it's a very small field, so you see a lot of the same people all the time. And that's just because I don't know why, but like it seems like sometimes in telephony, like you'll do business with one company, and like you'll hear about them like 3 or 4 weeks later on some completely different facet, and you're like, what? How are they there too? Like,
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I worked with some pretty niche kinds of things, early in my career. And I think if I'd have stuck with that kind of stuff, some kind of imaging workflow kinds of stuff, I think I would have been in kind of that same place where you kind of, the people all around. And I probably could have charged some, ridiculous consulting rates with that kind of, specialized field with people knowing who you are and that kind of stuff. I didn't do that, but I think that maybe I should have. Of course, I don't think it was the most interesting stuff in the world either, so maybe I shouldn't have, but I think I probably would have made a lot of money doing that.
Yeah. You said you've redone your React project 3 times. That would be a great conference topic or talk, about you call it third time's the charm, and explain your learning process. What did you learn? How did you learn it? Why did you go through these 3 I guess 2 rewrites, but 3 efforts?
Yeah.
It'd be a great talk. You'd get people really interested, and then they'd want to hire you to show them how to do it for them.
Yeah. Well, that and the fact, I mean, being hesitant to go and approach the speaker, right? I mean, when you are the speaker, that puts that onus on somebody else.
yeah, and it also puts that, I got to get up in front of all these people and make this talk.
Yeah.
There you go. That's the problem.
Yeah. Yeah. A good place.
Oh no, go ahead.
I think, being a team lead already, a good place to start with that kind of stuff is presenting some stuff to your team, which I imagine you're probably already doing. And, that's not too big a step away from, some local user group or something along those lines. If those might be some good steps to take before, going full bore into a large conference in Vegas.
Great point.
Yeah, that's a good point. Because I'm actually getting involved in some local user groups. There's like a Python group. I'm gonna get involved. There's like a web/PHP meetup. They're officially PHP, but they talk about literally everything web.
Cool.
And I got some of my coworkers. We're all gonna head out this month, and we're just gonna start showing up.
Yeah. That reminds me how I had Carl Franklin on Developer on Fire. He's the host or one of the hosts of .NET Rocks, right? Which, you know, to the question about what podcast you listen to, that's my favorite, you know, other than Developer on Fire software podcast.
.NET Rocks, yeah, but then you got to want to do .NET. You know.
Yeah, well, that was one of the things. One of the things that Carl and I talked about is that they touch on a lot of things that are not .NET. Right? I mean, there is a. I mean, if any programmer, I think, could benefit from listening to .NET Rocks. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff in there that wouldn't necessarily be relevant, but there's a hell of a lot that is too, and those guys are, you know, old pros when it comes to both podcasting and software. I was talking to them at a conference once, and they were telling me, and I don't remember exactly how it goes, but kind of depending on how you define podcast and, you know, the requirements for RSS feeds and all of that kind of stuff, that there's another show that would have a claim to it. But .NET Rocks is either the oldest or the second oldest podcast in the world, right? The longest running podcast.
Wow.
I got to go. Got a coaching session in 10 minutes. I need to get ready for it.
Okay,
all right.
Sounds good.
Bye.
It was good talking with you,
Emilio.
Yeah, likewise.
All right. So yeah, I mean, that PHP group, you know, being more general than that doesn't surprise me at all. I think there's a lot of that kind of stuff all over the place.
Yeah, because I was a little bit hesitant because my friend's like, it's a PHP group or whatever, and I was like, oh, dude, I don't know if I want to get into that. Like, and he's like, no, we have talks. Like, he did a talk on Docker a week ago. He did
Cool.
a couple of weeks ago. He did React stuff, and he basically took. Well, I guess maybe he took what I shared with all of them, and he just shared it out to another group. So maybe that is good. You know, start with your team, and then make a talk, and then go to the group and go from there.
Do you do like lunch and learn kind of things or anything like that?
Usually when we start a project, like if it's brand new, like I did one with the operations team on Chef, the DevOps section of it, and we just went through, you know, this every day for lunch from, you know, Monday to Friday. We just went through it, and they're not developers; they're truly operations people. They're more in the hardware. And so getting them into the DevOps thing was interesting, but they've come a long way. And I was like, wow, I can teach this. Like,
my experiences with ops teams is that there's usually one, maybe two guys that are really interested, right? That they want to script stuff and they want to do some things automatically and stop clicking around, you know, well, I guess for most of my ops people have been Windows, you know, engineers, so they're doing a lot of GUIs. You know, I guess it's probably different in, you know, in different worlds, but you know, it's still, right, you know, writing a lot of scripts and stuff. There were always some guys that there was this one guy that just he was automate everything. He was writing all kinds of scripts for all kinds of stuff. And the ops group manager, he said to me once, and he meant it as an insult, but he said, "This guy's just a junior dev in ops clothing." And I was like, "That is so awesome. That's what he is, and I love it." But yeah, it was just funny to me that he meant that as an insult, and I took it as being such a great compliment to the guy.
Yeah, like, I don't know why that would be a bad thing. Like,
yeah, for sure.
But I found that operations people have, in my experience, they've always been the kind of like, oh, I need to get this set up, and even if it takes me 6 hours to set up this server, like that's just how long it takes. And I'm like,
gonna do it the way I know how to do it.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, I got 40 of these to do, but you know, that just means that's 40 times 6. Like,
yeah. Yeah. Especially if they're getting paid by the hour.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what else is going on for you today? You an NFL Sunday guy?
I am not.
Yeah.
I'm not real big into sports. I'm not one of those tech people that is into sports as well. Like, it seems like there's a divide. You're either into it. If you're in tech, like you're either into sports or you're not. Like you're real passionate about it or you're not.
I still like playing basketball, right? I'm into actively doing stuff, but I used to be, football was, forget about me doing anything work related on Sunday. That was not going to happen. I'm gonna be in front of the TV from dawn to dusk, basically. But not anymore, man. It's something that has, I've gotten over it, and I think part of that is my kids, right? I've gotten to the point where I'd rather be playing with the kids than
Right.
doing that kind of stuff. But
Yeah, there's more important stuff out there now.
yeah, yeah. So I think you said that you are on your way to being married or something like that, or
Yep.
you mentioned fiance, right? Yeah.
Yep. Yep. On the way.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, that's good.
It's
Well,
been
it can't be.
great. We've been together since high school, so it's been great.
That's a
Growing up
rarity.
together. It is rare. I mean, we're going on, geez, 8 years now. And it's just been great.
Wow. Yeah. So gonna have kids right away?
No,
No.
no. I
Yeah.
know up front that that's not probably something that I'm interested in.
Fair enough. Yeah. To each his own. For me, it was me, and I got married later. I was 28 when I got married, but
Okay.
it was, and I had been, not having any inkling of, hey, here's anybody I'm going to marry for most of my youth, but it was, I mean, the instant that we got married, it was, honeymoon was, in the birth control, and let's go for it. So that was, that was our approach, but I'd always wanted to be a dad. So.
Okay. Yeah. That's what my dad said. He was like, well, if you know that up front that you don't want kids, he's like, you go with the feeling because you either do or you don't.
Yeah. So it sounds like you're open to it maybe at some point in the future, but
Yeah, maybe.
yeah.
It's not something I can do right now, trying to get life all started and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Well, you're clear on your priorities, it sounds like, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, hats off to my dad. I mean, he was 18 when they had me, so it was like, I don't know how he did it.
Yeah. Yeah. My mom was 18 and my dad was 19. So yeah, it's crazy. And then my dad worked for 42 years, I guess, for the railroad. And yeah, just got a job out of high school and supported a family and, just worked until he could retire.
Yeah, unfortunately in tech, it seems like you have to plan your retirement. It's not, you can't bank on getting those.
Yeah. Well, it's not just tech. I mean, it's the way of the world. Pensions are, unless you're working for government, it's not a thing anymore. And
Right.
that's, it's just the way it is. And I think there's a lot of reasons for that, but I don't know. I really think it's an improvement too. I don't want to be tied with golden shackles to where, I feel like I can't make a change at some point later in life. So I prefer it. I'd rather be able to jump around and, that kind of stuff. And ultimately, I think that, this business that I keep kind of denying that I have a business around the podcast, but, ultimately, I'm going to be an entrepreneur rather than a laborer, which I guess you could, well, it's not really a laborer, worker, whatever you call it, blue collar, not blue collar, white collar worker is what a software engineer is. Yeah. I don't know. I guess ultimately you're going to be a worker no matter what you're doing, whether you're,
Yeah. It's just whether or not you work for yourself and you're doing because if you're working for yourself, you get to define the goals and everything you want to do. So you're more likely to be satisfied at the end of it.
I think that's probably true. It also means that you're taking a lot more risk and that you can flame out, horrendously and, kind of wind up with your tail between your legs going looking for a job, too. So there's and also, I mean, I've never heard of anybody who made success in business who didn't, just work a shitload of time on it too. So
yeah, no, you got to put in. Yeah, you got to put in the time, but it pays off later when you got a nice company going, paying other people, other people are relying on you and your expertise. Like, I think that's a fulfilling life to me.
Yeah, I've talked to several folks who have started businesses, from software products and stuff like that on the podcast, and I think that is kind of a universal kind of thing that when they are the source of livelihood for people, that's kind of a big reward of the thing. It's also a lot of pressure too, though. I mean, man, That
Yeah.
that's a lot on your shoulders to think. Not only am I responsible for myself and my family, but for other families as well. That's like, holy cow, man. That's, if I mess up, that's a lot.
Yeah. But usually, if you get to that point where other people are relying on you, they chose to rely on you
Yeah, for
because
sure.
ultimately, as a worker, you get to decide who you work for. So as long as they're sharing in your vision, like it's kind of a win all around.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, Mark Grabansky was one that I just put out this past week at Front End Masters, right? And he's got a bunch of
Yep.
people working for them. It's a neat story. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, that story was real good. The one, where the USBs weren't working or whatever, and he was
Yeah,
just trying to figure out, and it was like all on the line for him. I thought that was a great story because
yeah,
it's like that's the stuff that happens to you. Like
yeah,
you literally have everything on the line, and the USB ports don't work anymore. You can't connect any of your equipment. Like,
yeah, yeah. Well, I got into since I've been thinking about this remote conference thing, I joined Joe Colantonio's, and he in this last one, the Automation Guild, he had a morning where things were supposed to be going, and he was having connectivity problems, and he's like rebooting his cable modem on the fly, trying to make the things work, and I'm like, holy cow, man. And so that's got me thinking like, boy, I got to see if I can find redundant internet connections or rent an office space or something along those lines, or what it's freaky, the things that when you're really putting a lot of eggs into one basket. Holy cow, the things that could happen.
yeah, what does he use? Did he make a homegrown solution for that, or?
For the site, he basically just used a membership plugin in WordPress to
Okay.
serve the thing, right? And I think that there were some other plugins for the video component of it, which I haven't really looked much into it yet. I have a membership site set up, and I have it set up. You can buy a membership. Right now, remoteconference.developeronfire.com. It's got tickets available and sign up and all of that stuff. It's just a WordPress site using plugins, basically kind of following Joe's example. So, more needed there for sure. And getting, some of the actual content of the conference and stuff is not there, but the infrastructure is there now.
Yeah, it's gonna be good. I'm excited to see that. You said January?
Yeah. Yeah. Joe's is going to be early January. So I'm putting mine in later January to kind of do a little separation. I don't think we have a lot of overlap in our audiences, but I would hate to step on his toes too. So
Right.
going to make it a little bit later.
Yeah, I had checked out his podcast. Unfortunately, it's not something that I'm a ton interested in, but the stuff that he talked about was real interesting though.
Yeah, I have listened to several episodes of his podcast. I haven't ever actually subscribed to it, but I've listened to a lot of his episodes because they're, test automation is very much relevant. I mean, it's not my specialty, but it's very relevant to the things that I do. And I think the things that QA automation engineers do are mostly more system test kinds of things, and that's stuff that's less relevant to what I do. So yeah, it's not in my wheelhouse, and I think why I think we don't necessarily have a lot of overlap, but it's good stuff too.
Yeah. Another one I found through Developer on Fire, the talk you just had with Saran.
Oh yeah,
That
yeah.
talk about somebody who's motivated. Holy smokes! Like you can just
For
hear it in
sure.
her voice. She loves it.
Yeah, totally. And all about the community, right? Just delivering good stuff for folks. And that's another one too, that I haven't subscribed to that podcast, but I've listened to a bunch of, when I see some of the names that she has, well, like Developer on Fire, right? We've got a lot of common guests, but, listening to her talk to Dave Thomas and some of those kind of folks, she's wonderful, about the way she just draws stuff out of people.
Yeah, that is a skill definitely. I don't know how people do it. Like getting that information out of somebody. Like even some of the questions that you ask, like you just draw this information from people, and it's like wow, who would have thought the question was gonna end up there?
Yeah, totally. And I mean,
Like
I didn't know I had this skill, right? I mean, it's still kind of weird to me that um, that I am good at this, right? And it's uncomfortable for me to say that, right? Which it shouldn't be, because, I mean, it's been awesome doing this, but it surprises me. I didn't know that I was a podcaster. It's kind of funny, but
Yeah.
it's fun.
Yeah.
It's great.
What was that book or the ebook you had? Punch Fear in the Face.
Oh yeah, yeah. I still haven't really added any flesh to that. I need to get back on that too.
I think there's a lot of places to go with that one for sure.
Yeah.
Because like when I had heard about it, that's kind of what got me motivated into all this sort of stuff. Because
Cool.
6 months ago, I'd have never joined a Hangout call. Like I'm very kind of like shy like that. So.
Well, I'm glad that you did join me here, and I'm glad you've engaged in the community and all that. It's good stuff, man. Yeah, Punch Fear it's for real, right? I mean, it's my experience of life. I don't know if you saw it in the Facebook group, but I put a link in there that I did an interview with this guy, 12-minute conversations that just guy reached out to me on LinkedIn and said, hey, will you do this thing with me? And that's basically the gist of what I talked to him about was, the rewards, the change in my attitude, right? I think I'd still say I'm probably pretty close to right in the middle between introvert and extrovert, but I've always had this just feeling that what I have to offer is not what people are looking for, and
Totally understand that.
changing that, and I'm still not all the way there, right? I still have my doubt that I think that's why I've been a little slower than I wanted to be on trying to get this remote conference thing out, is that I just, it's always back to George McFly, what I don't think I could take that kind of rejection. And, but yeah, it's life's better when you engage.
Yeah, that's what I'm kind of finding out, because making new relationships, meeting new people, it's been a good time.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's kind of helped get over. I mean, they coined that phrase. It's now imposter syndrome, but it's very real. Like, at least for me, like it's definitely something where, like Emilio said, hey, you should make a talk on that. And I was like, I don't think anyone would want to hear me talk on that. And then he expounded on it more, and I was like, maybe people would like to hear a talk on that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I can remember, I would do some of those kind of, brown bag lunch at work and do a talk, and some people would tell me, they're like, this would be awesome for the Denver Visual Studio user group. And I was like, you're right, it would. And that was the end of it. Right? I mean, that was as far as that conversation went. And but eventually I found my way, onto the stage at, user groups and conferences and stuff. And yeah, it's, people have received the stuff I've presented well, and, gotten a lot of compliments, and, people coming from the audience saying, hey, I want to hire you, stuff like that. That is for real. And
really, so there's actually people out at conferences headhunting.
Yeah. There's been a few guys, one in particular that it's like I saw him at, 3 different meetups. The first one was one I was presenting at, and then I kept seeing him at other ones. And yeah, he was a director at a local company, and he really wanted me to come work for him. And it never did work out, but, I think I was just asking too much money, but, I've had several people, offer me opportunities, just basically coming off stage.
Wow. So how did you get involved with those little local groups?
Attending was kind of the beginning, mostly just kind of listening and thinking, sometimes there were speakers that I was like, man, I would do better than this guy. Right. And,
okay.
They're eventually, I mean, one day I just kind of got up the nerve to send an email to an organizer of a group saying, hey, I'd like to present on a topic. I don't remember what it was. What was that first one that I did? I can't even remember what it was, but I sent him an email saying, here's a topic I'd like to present. And he was like, okay, how about next month? I'm like, oh, really? I didn't mean for it to be that soon. but yeah, that, that was the beginning of it. And so, and then, there's a local event called Denver Dev Day that happens twice a year. And I've given several talks at that. And then, talking to speakers in the speaker room, it's like, well, there are user groups that are, and drive an hour this direction or an hour this direction, different cities in Colorado, and a northern Colorado user group and a southern Colorado user group, and like the organizers of those groups kind of come to Denver for this event, and so they've seen me speak there, and so I get emails saying, hey, will you come give a talk at my group for this one, right? And so then it just kind of goes out from there. And now I've started submitting. I got to go to Oslo, Norway last summer, right? Because I submitted a talk to be able to get into the NDC conference that they have there. So it's, I just really, and when you think about it, user group organizers, most of them are desperate for somebody to present, and they're usually scrambling, trying to find presenters and, get their meetings filled. And so, I mean, they're looking for people, and they want you to come and give a talk.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, they said, how about next month? Like they didn't have anything scheduled for that month. They were just ready. Yeah. They were ready for you.
Yeah. And this was a pretty big group. I mean, I was really surprised by that. They get, sometimes, up to 100 people at the group. And wow. So I kind of had the impression that it was, booked months in advance and that kind of stuff. But yeah, it's hard. And because, some huge names, have traveled here to come speak at this group, I kind of had this impression that it was, something different, but yeah, I mean, they're always looking for people, and podcasts are the same, right? I sent an email to .NET Rocks saying, hey, I'd like to come on the show. And they were like, yeah, let's do it. Right. So it's totally, it's a lot more, real and reachable too. That's the other thing with going to conferences and sitting in speaker rooms, talking to the speakers is like, they're not different. They're all the same people. Even some of the Developer on Fire guests that I've had on that, are, stratospheric names that everybody knows. They just, they go out to dinner and have some beers just like everybody else.
Yeah, and they probably get nervous and all the other things. Like it's
for sure. Yeah, yeah. In fact, the last week I was at a local conference here, Explore DDD. It's domain driven design. The author of the domain driven design book was at the conference, and he was giving a talk, and he was late getting to his talk, right? And he was doing some last minute finishing of slides on his way, into the talk. So yeah, it's it's everybody.
Yeah, what is domain driven design? I haven't heard a whole lot about that.
The book by Eric Evans, Domain Driven Design, Tackling Complexity in the Heart of Software. It's not really an easy thing to pin down what exactly it means, because the book is, it's a book. It's a thick book. There's a lot to it.
Okay.
And Eric himself gave a talk 5 years after the book called What I Learned Since the Book. And in that talk, he basically said, I put the chapters in the wrong order because people would read the first third of the book, think that they've got it, and then not read the rest of the book and not get to the really important stuff, right? So to me, the important stuff, and actually I'll put a link into Slack when the episode of .NET Rocks that I was on that was not .NET related at all. It was 2 years ago. It was actually right before I started publishing Developer on Fire when I went on their podcast.
Okay.
So I went on there, and basically when I pitched to them that I wanted to talk about domain-driven design on the show, I basically, the first thing that they said was, we've kind of already covered that topic. And I was like, well, yeah, but I really don't like the way that it was presented. And I think that there's, that it could be done better. And that, because so in domain-driven design, there are what Eric calls the tactical patterns and the strategic patterns. Okay. The tactical patterns are often kind of the focus and kind of the thing that people talk about quite a bit. Um, but those are, I think, the least important part of the thing. So tactical patterns are kind of some implementation concerns of how you deal with modeling your domain and connecting to databases. So it's about repositories and, you know, some of those kinds of patterns that you would use to actually implement stuff in your domain. The strategic patterns in domain-driven design are more about how you decompose a complex problem. And service-oriented architecture, I think, is, and microservices being, to me, basically the same thing as service-oriented architecture. You might disagree with that, right? That's something that a lot of people, use those terms to mean all kinds of different things, which is really a problem with domain-driven design and really any buzzword that you come across. But the strategic patterns are kind of about the high level design of your system and breaking it down into bounded contexts that have autonomy and that you can deal with the model of your domain inside of a bounded context in a different way that you deal with modeling a different part. And so the kind of the idea is that a customer to your marketing department is an email address, right? They're a spam recipient, right? A customer to your shipping department is, an address that they're going to send things to, and and on, right? A customer means different things in these different domains, and so to have, the one customer table that has every concern for the customer in your database is not necessarily the most productive way to do things, and you can get deadlocks on these transactions that are dealing with things that have nothing to do with each other. So modeling your domain into bounded context, right, where you're dealing with specific things inside of that boundary, and it's not necessarily explicit in domain-driven design that those things need to be autonomous and that they should be completely separated and not have dependencies on each other, but it's implied. And in service-oriented architecture or microservices type architectures, then that's made more explicit that they should be autonomous.
Right.
So that's kind of the gist. To me, I think, if you kind of take, look at a Java type language, right, that domain-driven design is an interface and microservices is an implementation of that idea.
That makes a lot of sense. It sounds like it definitely solves some big problems, actually, because you're right that marketing versus, sales versus somebody, another department, customer is a different thing. And if everything's all stuck in, you're right, if everything's stuck in that one table, suddenly, you have a email list that's being sent out that's doing a bunch of transactions on the table that someone else is trying to do something else on. And
Yeah. Yeah, the example that I've heard, a guy that I really like, Udi Dahan, he talks about that, if I'm updating my marital status and my shoe size, those are not competing transactions that you need a consistency boundary on those things and need to worry about that, right? Both of those transactions should succeed independently, and they have nothing to do with each other, and
right,
they don't need to be on the same table.
that's 100% true. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I think microservices has taken that idea forward, and it is really, to me, part and parcel of domain-driven design. I think it's, well, I think the way I said it is probably the best way. That it basically is an implementation of the ideas of domain-driven design.
Yeah, they definitely sound like they have a lot of intersections
Yeah,
because, when you're doing the microservice thing, like this thing lives and it does what it does, and that's it.
yeah,
And it doesn't try and do anything else. It just says, whenever I get this message, I'm going to do this thing.
yeah,
And
yeah. The Unix philosophy, right? Do one thing and do it well.
right.
Yeah,
And that's worked out for us. Like messaging buses are something that I'm really interested in. Like I just love that, creating this giant bus across all these different services and applications and things.
yeah.
That's what really gets me going because that's just fun.
Well, yeah, we have that in common. I'm very much into that. Publish, subscribe. Commands and events and all of that kind of stuff. Yeah, that drives me a lot. I love it.
Yeah, like we're trying to get rid of, that big giant SQL application I talked about earlier. And I was actually looking into, remote procedure calls through like RabbitMQ, where you send a message out and there's this just, you know, unknown cluster behind it that will solve the problem that you give it. And then it'll
Yeah,
spit it back out to you.
yeah. That is great. Yeah. Yeah. And every time I've dealt with one of those SQL type applications with all those stored procedures, there's always, a few of those stored procedures are, 10,000 line stored procedures as well.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then, but for some reason, like everything seems to be split up. So like, it's like the microservices of stored procedures is what we got going on. Like there's a procedure and it'll do one thing. It'll parse some data. There's another one that'll do this. It'll insert or update and instead of putting it all in one, it's like spread across all these stored procs, which makes it more difficult because now you got 50 windows open to achieve one task and you're like, where am I?
Well, and even with them separated out, though, I imagine they're probably all operating on the same data, which ultimately is a source of pain as well.
Right. And, having to pass everything in and make sure that, the one big procedure is keeping track of all of the variables and, was it changed here and you didn't put an output on it? Like,
Yeah.
as you start drilling down, you find these things like, hey, this variable doesn't work. When was it broken? Like, nobody knows. Like, it's just, did it ever work is the real question.
Yeah. Well, hopefully there's source control for those stored procedures, but that's not always a given.
Nope, it came from 2008 era, so it just kind of exists on the server. So
yeah, that's no fun.
Yeah,
Yeah.
But that's the fun part. You get to rewrite it and put it in source control and do all the fun things with it. So
do it right this time.
Yeah, well, as best as you're gonna get, I guess.
Yeah.
Right is the guy who designed what we have now. He did it right. He did it right for what he needed.
Yeah, everybody does what they can with the tools they have available, and under the constraints and all of that stuff. That was something Sandy Metz said that I thought was pretty awesome.
Yeah, you gotta separate, definitely. Like, I've seen people who can't separate the people from the code, where they're like, "I can't believe you did this," and it's like, I wrote that 5 years ago. Like, it was meant to do something completely different. Like, and I found that those people tend not to stay around teams very long because that's not the point.
Yep.
The point isn't to play the blame game on whose code did what.
Yeah.
It's just to find the problem and hopefully fix it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I should get going. I got to go.
All right.
Give the kids my attention here. So.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having a call.
Yeah, absolutely. It was good getting to talk to you, and I'm looking forward to having more of these with you.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right. Well, you have a good Sunday.
All right. You too. We'll see you soon.
Thanks. Bye-bye.